Hey everyone, welcome back to today's edition of the Seats to Streets podcast. I'm your host, JR Horn. Over there is our co-host, Brian Gorman, and we're so glad you're tuning in with us, whether it's through your earbuds on iTunes or Spotify, or you're right here with us on YouTube. So glad to have you with us. Now, Brian, we talked a little bit about last week about your affinity for, I'd say punching people, but we probably ought to let people know you a little more before we start saying you punch people. We talked about some kickboxing classes that you go to and things like that, but there's something else that some of our listeners may not be unaware that you really have a knack for smoking meats. I mean, I I don't know about
Yeah.
if you guys follow Brian at all on Instagram or a friend on Facebook. My goodness, it is lopsided 3-1 pictures of barbecued meats to his family.
I was
I mean,
thinking that's
let's
a
just be
pretty
reality,
fair.
right?
I think that's a pretty honest number, and
Okay,
3 to 1 might be
gracious.
conservative in that conversation because when I post pictures of food, it's going to be 2, 3, 4, 10 at a time because when I do that, like I don't this weekend. We
Right?
got people coming over this weekend, and this weekend, like let's not deal with Saturday. I'm gonna deal with Sunday, right? Because Sunday's church day, right? We're all busy on Sunday,
Right. Yep.
and so on Sunday at 4 o'clock, I'm gonna be serving what it looks like right now. I'm gonna be serving a pulled pork. I'm gonna be serving 3 racks of glazed ribs. I'm gonna be
Oh,
serving about 5 pounds of chorizo queso, smoked chorizo queso, and it looks like I'm probably going to do some Italian, some sweet Italian. I got to get those made up this week. So probably some sweet Italian sausage, um, yeah, and some coleslaw,
mm,
horseradish coleslaw. I've been working on, and so yeah, that's going to be that. And then I've got a. I made up my barbecue sauce a couple days ago, so that's all set and ready. But I've been tinkering around with a Carolina mustard sauce. So,
ooh, now
because
you're
I
talking
really
my
love that
language.
on pulled pork. I don't like it on it, but I
Yes.
like it on pulled pork. And
Yes.
so I think I've almost got that one dialed in. And so yeah, we got people coming over for all of that. Like I'm not doing a chicken or brisket this weekend, or and I haven't decided exactly. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna do some sweet Italian sausages. I might make up
Mm,
some Hungarian or some Texas hot links because lately I've been getting really close on what I want my Texas hot links to be. So
mm,
yeah, it's gonna be a
mm.
lot of the and there'll be lots and lots of pictures.
Now we
Now I'm
gotta wrap this
salivating,
up quick because we
but
gotta I just wanna
yeah,
go eat now. Maybe there's
that's gonna
leftovers.
be and that's the Sunday afternoon. Like
It's not
yeah,
even for Labor Day. That's
that's
just
trying to figure out how to do. Like I've got I keep this little booklet that where I map out my day based on, okay, if I started at this time and move this to this smoker, so that goes to this smoker, and then if I get this put on here, that means I can get to church, get back from church, get this off of this smoker, put onto that smoker, put this onto.
you
So
have a you
yeah,
have a smoke you have a smoking diary?
I do. Yeah, I really do keep a like I've
Okay.
okay, I'm going to give you a plug for something I get no plug for. But I like notebooks. I use a lot of
Mhm.
notebooks. The one I've moved to recently that I'm kind of falling in love with is Rocket. Rocket Book makes this little bitty skinny one. And it's basically a dry erase. Like they
Mm.
actually give you this little rag and you get it wet and you wipe it and the whole page just wipes off. You have to use a very specific pen that they give you. But the other thing that's really cool with it is, so for example, I can do what I've done. And if you're watching on YouTube, you see like there's a map of my day. These are the 6 things I plan to cook. This is some things I'm going to be purchasing to make all that happen. So, but what you can do with it is if I put a little mark down here, I can take a picture of it in the app, and then it sends it based upon whichever marking I put on the bottom. It sends it to wherever that marking is based.
Hmm.
So on this one, I have a particular file in Evernote that's just food, for my different barbecue schedules, so that way I can use previous schedules if I'm doing catering or doing
'Cause
something
that's what
small for
most
somebody
people
else.
have in their Evernote is, diary of food.
Well, but when I take a picture in my app, it actually takes this thing and sends it to a
Oh,
file
that's
in
right.
Evernote, or it
Yeah, that's
sends
right.
it to Google. Like I can circle another one, sends it to Google Drive, another one sends to an email to me, or it
Mhm.
can send an email to you, depending upon what I've got it set based upon those things. And then, but it's also got a calendar and goal and strategy stuff, but it's all in this tiny, tiny little booklet, which I love how small it is. It's big enough that I carry, but not so big that I'm carrying like a whole nother book.
Right.
And it's got a lot of just empty sheets of paper. So yeah, I go through and I write out my barbecue schedule so I can make sure that throughout the day I can hit my points.
I'm dying over here at my barbecue schedule. Dear diary, I overcooked the brisket today. I shouldn't do that again. I mean, that's what I'm thinking, right? I
That's
mean, I
that's why I do it. In all honesty, it sounds strange, but the whole point is, I used to every time I'd go to make something new, I'd start like from scratch. Well, how am I going
yeah,
to do this one? And I went,
like,
no,
oh, how did I do that? Or
this I want to figure out. I started being very specific. I made it this specific way. And
right,
then the next time I'd make it, I'd go, what did I want to change about it? And I'd follow the exact same model, but I make one change, maybe when I wrap, maybe how I wrap, maybe the different. So I learned all these new techniques, which now every once in a while, when I get a piece of meat that's not doing what it's supposed to do, I know enough techniques to shift the system.
right,
Um,
right.
but it guarantees my food is done on time, and that's when I started running into trouble. Is I'd get food and then it wouldn't be ready on time, and people are waiting around,
Hmm.
and or the food wouldn't come out quite right. So I can do these sort of food experiments without worrying about
I've done
completely
that.
messing it up.
I've done that. I mean, how many times how many times we're all guilty of this? How many times have we decided, oh, I'm gonna this, especially in the ministry, you're like, oh, I'm gonna invite over all these families and I watched this TV show and they did this brisket in like 8 hours and it was a
Yeah,
speed brisket and it's like, oh,
wasn't any good.
I'm gonna do that and then you try to do it and it's like fail miserably and you're like, well, let's
Yeah,
just run to KFC and get some chicken. I mean,
I
I
I
I
have
I mean,
on
I haven't done it a
occasion.
lot, but I've
No,
several times where I'm like, "Guys, we have at least another hour before the meat is done." I mean, that's just the
yeah.
way it
Now there are ways to cheat around
is.
that, but I did run into that once. That's why I started changing this. As it was usually people would come over, and it would be 2 and 3 hours after the time we thought we were going to
Yeah.
eat that we were going to eat. So I've learned a lot of tricks, and it's because I write all these notes down.
All the appetizers are gone, all the side dishes are gone.
That's where
People
the
are already
queso
getting into
comes in.
dessert, and
Because
it's
once I
like,
started,
"Hey, meat's
yeah,
done."
once I started making my own chorizo, then I started making my own smoked queso to go with that chorizo where it gets mixed in together. People will be really happy for a long time if
That's
you give them
true.
just some 5 pound, because it really, I will make 5 pounds of queso,
A little cheese and grease, man, goes a long
and
way. So,
it's all good,
well,
happy places. Yeah. What are we talking about?
last week we talked about Pastor Appreciation Month. It's October. Hopefully where you're at, it's maybe starting to feel a little cooler. I know for me walking out this morning, it felt really nice. Like I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to fall. So here in Louisville, Kentucky, it's still a bit steamy. We just got out of a stretch of heat indexes of up in the hundreds. But I woke up today and it was 57. I mean, it was awesome. So
Yeah.
I'm excited. But as the fall comes, quarter four comes, there's some fall planning or even end of the year planning. So last week we talked about Pastor Appreciation Month and what does that look like for you and your church, and even for us as pastors, like how do we accept that? Like what do we do as far as our mind frame when it comes to Pastor Appreciation Month? But this time I want to talk about the do's and don'ts of an end of the year giving. Many churches spend the end of the year, sometime between Thanksgiving and Christmas, or maybe even October, and spend quarter four having a designated end of the year giving. It's pretty common, but what do we do with it? And so I know, Brian, you've got some experience with that. I've got some experience with that. And I thought today we just kind of go through a quick list of the three do's and the three don'ts of what to do with your end of the year giving. All right.
Yeah.
Sound
Yeah.
good?
And it really is good to do these. If your church doesn't do it, it's something about you might want to
Hmm.
consider, whether it be end of the year or whether it be some other time. It's good to do because it kind of helps put a bigger picture goal in front of
Right.
your church,
Sure.
to go and accomplish something. We'll deal with some of that in a moment, but it's really, it kind of boosts generosity, and it boosts the conversation about giving and about how that might work. So really encourage you to consider this if you don't already do it. But yeah, let's work through some do's and don'ts. Jr. How about you cover some do's and I'll cover some please don't do this kind of things.
Yeah. Like, but begging, please, pleading on the floor. All right. Here's the first one. Do set a clear goal and a target amount that you can put in front of your congregation. How many times, Brian, have we interacted with a fellow minister friend of ours and they said, "Yeah, we're doing an end of the year giving campaign and we're going to give toward this ministry or toward this cause or toward this people group." Well, great. What are you aiming for? Oh, whatever, just whatever the Lord blesses us with. And that isn't bad in and of itself. However, that's not really painting the bullseye and the target for your church to shoot for. So when you go into this fall and you are setting a end of the year giving campaign, whatever it is, put a number. Put a number out there so the church can see this is where we're going. And man, we've got to be able to go. Because here's the thing: when you have your analytical people that are in the stands, that are in the seats, they're going to start to look and go, okay, man, so we got 10 weeks left, and we got to hit this number. That means we have to have this much every week. That means we got to do this, and they're like, okay, that means for our family we got to give this much, and we were hoping everybody gives that much too. I mean, they're breaking it down.
Yeah.
So definitely set a clear numerical goal to shoot for on your end of the year giving campaign.
Yeah, I would add to that, set a goal and tell your people that, hey, here's the goal, but
Mhm.
also say, if we surpass that, here's what will happen.
Mhm.
Because you will, in many churches, you'll be amazed how easily it will be that you surpass that
Mhm.
number.
Yeah.
So that everything we get above and beyond this. So yeah, but having this really defined mark, it's so great for your church to celebrate that when you hit it. Like, look what we did versus, hey, how nice that there was this thing.
Mhm.
So giving that clarity helps. So let's talk about the don't side of that. What you don't want to do is don't mention it just one time.
Mhm.
So a lot of times what we do is, because we've been working through it for weeks, months before we get it in front of the
As
people.
a staff, right?
Right. We're a little bored with it, a little tired of it. We just want to get that number out there so we can make something happen.
Mhm.
But no, that number needs to be mentioned over and over and over again, because at one time in church history, right, the idea of a normal regular church attender was maybe 3 times a month.
Right.
Today, regular church, someone who says that they regularly go to church may only be there once a month, once
Mhm.
every 6 weeks, and still consider themselves, oh, that's my church, very faithful to church. It reminds me of something Chick-fil-A did one time, and that is Chick-fil-A at one point brought in a bunch of people and had them look at this slogan, because Chick-fil-A was so tired of this slogan that they wanted to shift gears and move to a new slogan. So they kind of presented the old slogan and the new slogan in front of people at the same time. And people went, man, eat more chicken. That's an amazing slogan. And all the Chick-fil-A people are like, we've been using that
That's
for years. That's the
that's
one
our
we wanted to
slogan.
change. And people went, change? We've never heard that before.
Yep.
And it just, and it just that's actually when they really doubled down on it, and now you see it everywhere. They just realize, hey, that
Billboards and
works.
yep,
And
100%.
so say what you're going to do and say it over and over and over again. Keep it in front of people. Very similar to what we talked about last week with why we keep talking as a church about this between 130 to 200,000 number.
Mhm.
Having that in front of people and always reaching your one. Again, it's that same premise there, but put into practice financially as well.
Yep. I agree. Couldn't agree more. The more times you mention it, the more times you point toward it is key. So same thing. So on the same vein, let me give you another do. On the same vein of this idea of mentioning your goal, mentioning this more than once, do give your people many ways to give toward the goal. In the past, it's always been in person. Hey, come on in. This is we're going to designate this time of the service or designate this specific area or this box or go to this counter at the next steps, whatever it is. That's always been the typical way of giving toward this campaign. And man, we are in a whole new world. I mean, COVID has really pushed that forward. So we can't only do one way or one mode of giving. We have to give our people multiple ways to give. And you can even get really creative with that. Sometimes it's not only just taking money and not only just having the ability to run a credit card or to give by check or to give by cash in person or by proxy, whatever. Oftentimes now you can donate toward that goal by giving stocks, giving shares in companies, and they're able to church is able to process sell that and take that money. I mean, that's something that we've seen many churches in the past before do. I mean, I had a friend that worked out in Vegas, and he said every once in a while we get a few poker chips
Yeah.
come through the offering plate. And he said we'd save them up once a month, take them back in, cash them in, and but that's people would stumble in and they wanted to give, and wanted to be able to take that. So definitely give your people multiple ways to get it. Explore the ways that you have at your fingertips, and give them multiple ways to give toward the campaign.
Yeah. In fact, if I could add to that, I would add to give multiple people the way to give. And what I mean by that is, if this is something your whole church is concerned about, how are you talking about that with your kids? How are you
Mm,
talking about it with the students? How are they plugged into this as well? So it's something the whole church is concerned with, so that they can give as well. But this does
mhm,
bring us to a don't, that if you want to think about how do you build those multiple things, the don't is don't make um, in-person giving the only option,
Mm-hmm.
right? So here's the way to think about it. If you put something out on your Facebook page or your church's Instagram or Twitter or whatever it is you guys use, if you put out a sort of a promotion of this thing you're trying to do, this number, people may sit there and go, that's really great. But if they don't have an action step that goes with it, by the time it comes back around to it, they will forget, right? How many times do we do this? I've got sitting on my table upstairs right now the registration and the little license plate sticker for my son's car.
Mm-hmm.
Every time he walks by, I remind him, this is here. Your plates are now out of date. You have to put
Oh,
this on.
that's going to be a fantastic life lesson.
It is going to be a serious learning experience for him. But I'm not going to put it on for him. I just remind him every time, right? But I remind him, and he's like, well, I'm doing something else right now. It's always something else right now. We'll see how much more expensive that something else becomes before long, right? But that's his to have to resolve and his to have to figure out. And so with all of that, the same thing is true with our people, right? You give them this great post that they're excited about. You talk to them. If you put it, for example, let's say you talk about it in your closing announcements or your next steps at the end of your time. If you haven't told them how they can give right then, the odds of it happening are pretty slim. Pretty slim. And so thinking about that time frame, how do we get it before we take up offering is going to be key, but also when they see it online, how do they do it right now? So don't make in-person giving the only option for this.
Absolutely, 100%. And the only way you advertise it is in person. If they have to come into your building and sit in the seats for them to hear what you're doing, you've missed another audience. Remember, go back to the idea. Somebody attending your church regularly is 1 out of 4 Sundays. So there you go.
Well,
Here's the
something
last
our
do.
people ask for. I'm going to add one more to that.
Go ahead.
Something our people ask for sometimes, like, hey, is there a resource that I could use to share about something about in our church to our one? Well, your social media post about this thing that your church is doing is a great resource, and teach your people this. It's a great resource for them to share on their pages that promotes the kind of church you are, which then gives them the ability to speak to their ones within the community, right? I can't reach all of them, but I can reach one of them. It gives them the ability to do that, and puts a resource in their hand that makes for an easy, natural conversation as they start working towards some of those goals.
100%. Here's something interesting before I get to that Brian. I didn't know this until I jumped into the missionary world and raising our own support, like raising our funds like missionaries to do this Seats the Street stuff, is that oftentimes secular companies will do a charitable giving match.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I think we just last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, got a check from one of those companies for like $11,000.
They will, if your company does it, one, you have to find out if your company does it, and two, if the charity is approved, it does have to be an approved charity. They will do a match, and you have to show that you've given, and then they will look at that and they will match it up to a specific, up to a certain dollar amount. But I mean, we get charity matches. We'll have different companies at the end of the year or at the end of the quarters come in, and our giving page it'll say the company, and it's like, oh, okay, awesome, thanks. So all right, here's the last do. And then Brian, you can round it out with the last don't. Here's the last do when it comes to the do's and don'ts of your end of the year giving campaign. Do make this giving campaign, make this giving target a part of growing your church's reach and impact for the gospel. Now, I say this because I'm not going to take away Brian's thunder on this on the next don't. But if we don't show where this giving campaign is elevating and building not only the kingdom but the church's impact, like your 130 to 200,000, how can this giving impact whittle that down from 130 to 200,000 to 100,000 to 80,000? What does that look like? Be sure to make sure that your giving campaign paints an accurate picture of how you and your church are making and boosting your impact for the gospel locally or globally. Wherever you're giving it, whatever you're giving toward, make sure they see the deep impact. It's something so big where they say, I've got to be a part of that, because if it's bigger than myself and something bigger than me, I want to be a part of that. I want to give toward that. So make sure that you're painting such a beautiful picture that they look and go, I have to be a part of that.
Yeah. So something we haven't really talked much about are like some examples as to the places you may give. And I think this is going to matter for what my don't will be. But let me give you some examples of things I've seen other churches do I've seen churches with their end of the year give to pay off the mortgage
Mhm.
of a local charity that was trying to expand what they were doing, but they couldn't because of how high their mortgage was. And so paying off the mortgage. I saw another church be able to raise that money in order to support just a local food bank. And they said they wanted to be able to provide 2 months worth of expenses for that bank, and so for that food bank, and they figured out what that was going to be, raised that money for that perspective. But you can also use that same thing to say, hey, there's some projects we really need to get done here around the church,
Mhm.
um, and be able to raise money to handle some projects that you just didn't have in your budget to accomplish. This brings me to my don't make the campaign internal, meaning for your church, every year.
Mhm.
But
That's
you
key
can
phrase.
make it pretty regularly. In fact, our general model here is about one out of every three. About one out of every three will be for something for the good of the church, our church, so that we can be more effective at reaching our ones. So
Mhm.
whatever it is we're doing, it's for that purpose. So, for example, last year we really needed to make some upgrades to our internet capacity because we were running very low on that. We needed to buy some new video equipment, new lighting equipment, new audio equipment because
Mhm.
we were not prepared for the streaming world. And so we needed to really bump a lot of that up to improve the streaming capacity. Now, I will say this. One thing that we do consistently is if we do something at the end of the year where it's like, hey, we're going to raise $50,000, I'm just throwing a random number out, right? That we will always say 10% of whatever comes in will go out to this charity as well. And we'll define a specific charity or a specific organization or community so that we are always tithing on top of that or out of
Mhm.
that as well. It just kind of helps say, hey, this is part of who we are and what we would desire for you as well. But along with that, we have um, we've multiple times raised money for things in our church, in our building, whether it be redoing carpeting, buying new chairs, major some renovations around the building where we tore down some walls. All those things have been a part of that. But again, for us, it's about once every 3 years. That means the other 2 years, we helped build a building in India with one. We actually bought a vehicle and some agricultural equipment one year
Mhm.
for a missionary that we supported. So something you can do to help in this is reach out to your missionaries, see what they need, because there may be some big things that your missionaries need that they can't put in their budget. You don't have the just the expendable money to drop into that. But if they need something big, like a new tractor, like a new motorcycle, like a new bus, like whatever it might be, right?
Mhm.
This is a good way for you to go, hey, let's rally the church around this missionary, around this cause, maybe around a local organization you support.
Mhm.
And then along the way, because they've seen a generous heart in things, then it's not a big deal when you ask for something for the church internally, as long as they see, as you mentioned a minute ago, how's this going to impact the end game of who we're trying to be as a church? How
Mhm.
is this really going to make an impact? So, for example, one thing we have needed, but we've never put into the end of year is a new HVAC unit for our main room.
Hmm.
Like we have never put that in the end of the year. In fact, every year what we've done is we've saved up for the past few years, knowing that that was going to go bad. We've saved up for the past few years so that we're replacing one of them this year, but we're doing that out of money that the church has saved because the moment you start, this is going to come out more directly than intended. So, JR, maybe you can soften this. The the moment you start making all of your purchases maintenance and upkeep purchases, then you are going to end up in maintenance mode,
Mhm.
which is a sign that you're starting to die. If you start spending a large portion of your personal money on medical bills, it's a sign that you are not getting healthier typically.
Mhm.
So it's the same thing is true within your church. If the vast majority of, hey, what do we need is routine maintenance that just hasn't been done, or things that you knew were going to go bad, like HVAC units,
Mhm.
I would just caution you there because before long, it will always be, oh, we've got to buy this other thing for us, this other thing for us, this other thing for us. And the church begins to run the same mistake that I hope we would coach our people against. Don't wait for your IRS return and count that as part of your budget, like, oh, finally we're
Mhm.
going to get a return. I'm saying that as someone who's made that mistake. and
Mhm.
and if that doesn't come in the way it is, all of a sudden your whole system is messed up.
Mhm.
Instead, show a heart of generosity. Use these to really promote the causes that your church stands behind, and don't make it all internal, and don't make it all maintenance based.
Yeah.
So if you can show how you're built, how the things you're doing, even internal, are good for the direction of the church, awesome. People will
Yeah.
get behind that.
And Pastor, listen, if you are on here, you're listening through your headphones on iTunes, or you're watching with us here on YouTube, and you're like, "Oh my goodness, our entire budget is fixing the carpet
Yeah.
and making sure that we're taking stains out of the carpet and fixing drywall and paint and a sidewalk and paying someone to mow the grass
Been
and
there. Yeah.
we're we're not saying that's negative. What we are saying is that we understand the people and the voices and the individuals around you that are asking for these things to get done. And oftentimes, because the tyranny of the urgent plays in, those things are urgent and they need to be done. I remember walking into church a couple months ago. We had a massive downpour. I'm talking here in the South, we call them gully washers. It was massive. It was so massive. It ripped a part of the guttering off the church building. I mean, it was literally laying in the grass.
Hmm.
That's called the tyranny of the urgent. That's got to get done.
Yeah.
There's no other way around it. And oftentimes, when there's so much urgency to get these things done, we can start to only see them, and we kind of forget about the 130,000 people that are next to our church that don't know us.
Right.
Until we have to have someone like Andrew from Kingdom Analytics that you've heard from in the past to come in and go, "Hey, don't forget, there's 130,000 people around your church that don't know Jesus yet." Oh
Yeah. And let me
yes.
help you think about it this way. Actually, I was just coaching another church on this earlier this week. Yeah, they were dealing with some staffing struggles. They know they need to hire some more staff, but they don't have the money to hire all the different
Mm.
staff they need. So they were kind of
Every church.
sharing with me, right? They're like the 5 different staffing positions they may need, which ones were full time, which ones were part time. And, um, and the way that we discussed it was this. I use a I use some terminology with them, some business language that you may not want to be able to use with other in other settings. But basically, what I said is there are certain positions that you will hire that will help you bring more people into your church, create more health within the church. Some positions are kingdom expanding positions,
Right, right,
and some positions are kingdom health positions,
right,
strengthening
right.
positions. If you have to make a hire and you know you need some strengthening positions like admin people,
Mhm.
um, uh, uh, like kind of behind the scenes roles,
True.
coordinators, things like that. Spend the first amount of money you have on your kingdom expansion people,
Right.
so that now you have created this motivation within the church so they would understand when you spent it on kingdom strengthening. Same thing holds true with this kind of giving. If you can help your church see that you use your money to drive the vision and direction of the church forward to expand the kingdom, then at that point you're going to find it becomes a whole lot easier to you will have more money because you create more generous people to
Yep.
do some of the other things that need to be done. If it's always fixing the sidewalks, that becomes a lot harder.
100%. 100%. Yeah, we get it and we get it. Trust me, if you're there and you're listening, you're like, "Man, this is me." We want to help. So here's what we want you to do. If you've done a end of the year giving campaign and you've got some great ideas of how it's worked, drop it below in the comments. We would love to hear that, and we'd love to resource the other pastors by seeing what's going on there. Please don't forget, like, comment, and subscribe so that you can be notified the next time we go and post a video and upload one of these videos. But if you would love to have a conversation with us, we'd love to have a conversation with you. Down below is our website as well as my email address. Click that, and I'd love to have a conversation with you about what it would mean to move your people from Sunday morning seats to local and global streets. So until next time, we will see you on the flip side. Take care, folks.
Later, guys.